my spooky friends. This is John, your host for Dairyland Frights. And I just wanted to ask you if you could please help support my podcast here. I am now on Patreon. And if you could give $1, $3, everything helps so I can buy better equipment, be able to afford, maybe some studio time or get some additional people to help out with research. And I know you really don't have to do anything, but I truly appreciate it, especially, running this podcast all by myself can be a challenge some days, but I do love it. And I do appreciate all your support. And again, I say thank you, my spooky friends. I truly appreciate it. Hello, my spooky friends. I'm John, your host for the greatest. All right, we're not the greatest, but we're one of the greatest paranormal podcasts out there, Dairyland Frights, that cover everything creepy and spooky and mysterious in the Midwest. And today, I am so blessed again to have so many great guests. And it continues. I have Stevi from Truth or Demons. So, Stevi, how are you? Welcome.
I'm great. How are you? I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. And one of the things I always tell, my guests who are on, if you could please tell me a little bit about your podcast and what it's about so they can, Miss Spooky Friends can check it out.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, my podcast for season 1, my main focus is covering the Warrens and their cases and the movies that portrayed their cases, and then the facts and actual truths behind those cases and movies.
Great. And for people who don't know the Warrens, could you kind of give just a brief idea, to my audience who they are?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Warrens are most known for being the sort of pioneers in the ghost hunting world. They started ghost hunting in the early 1950s. They founded their society for, it's called the New England Society for Psychic Research or Paranormal Research, Nesper? Paranormal Research, New England Society for Paranormal Research, and it was founded in 1952. They are best known for the Conjuring film franchise. Those movies are about their cases.
Nice. And so one of the things I always ask all my guests is what interested you in the paranormal and, especially the Warrens? What interested you in that?
I love this question. Ever since I was a little kid, my mom is really into it, and I talk about her a lot on the show. She got me into it because we used to watch a lot of paranormal television shows together. Like everyone talks about how back when they started, it was Unsolved Mysteries, Sightings, Beyond Belief, Fact or Faked. I love that one. Yes.
Yeah.
And then me and my mom watched a lot of Paranormal State with that guy who had Lorraine on a lot. And that's where I learned about her. So I didn't know much about Ed and Lorraine until I started watching those things with my mom. But what really got me into the paranormal was when I was 8 years old. I saw the movie The Entity, and it hooked me on the whole thought of paranormal, the whole idea of things like that happening and people going through it. I was hooked. I wanted to be a parapsychologist when I was that age. I thought for sure that's what I would grow. I'd grow up and be Barry Tapp. So.
Yeah. And so people, correct me if I'm wrong, Stevi. The Entity was about that woman who was molested by these two.
There were 3. There was 3. One big one and 2 little ones, according to her. And her name was Doris Bither or Bither. It depends on who you get your information from. But she claimed it was one big one and 2 little ones, and they would hold her down and assault her repeatedly. And then they made a movie about it in the 80s, in 1982.
And by the way, if you get a chance, this is an old school movie, and I always recommend old school horror to all my spooky friends. Go back. It's kind of hard to find. It is freaky. I mean, they're doing things to this poor woman that you're just like, oh my God.
And they were really, the movie was so well known for how good the effects were. It was the first time they'd attempted anything like that. Mm-hmm. And the effects were very, a lot of people thought they were incredible.
Yeah. Awesome. And, again, everyone shares their different insights on everything. And I love your podcast. highly recommend it to people because she has a lot of fun and she does a great one. I
Thank you.
did listen to your Amityville. Oh, you're more than welcome. Your Amityville horror one.
Yeah.
I don't want to brag, but I almost bought that house.
No way. Oh
Guess
my
what?
gosh. I am so jealous. Every time I see it go up for
So
sale on the internet, I get so excited.
so about, oh boy, 5-6 years ago, it was a little while ago, I saw it and I'm like, I'm doing this. And I called the real estate agent and just really quickly, because my spooky friends heard about it. So I talked to the real estate agent and she's like, are you a paranormal investigator? And I'm like, well, yeah, kind of. I'm not like full time. I don't do it for a living. She goes,
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you right now, it is not haunted. Okay. Leave the poor people alone. Okay. And I'm like, no. I'm serious. I'm a serious buyer. So, anyway, fast forward to it. She's like, it's not haunted. It's never been haunted. I've been doing real estate for 30 years. If you want a haunted house, I will show you a haunted house if you really want one. And I'm
I
like,
need that realtor.
really? Huh. Yeah. And anyway, then I talked to the owners and they were like, look, it's not haunted. And I said, why are you leaving? They go, well, I'm going to be honest with you. It's a lot of work because they have a boathouse. It's a huge house. It's absolutely gorgeous. A lot of hardwood floors, a lot of other things in it. So it's a lot of work and their kids are moving out and they were like, I just don't have the energy or time. And I said, so you've never had a paranormal experience? And they're like, no, not even a creak, not even nothing.
Wow.
So I was going to fly out and because they were going to give me a good price on it and everything. And I was going to fly out and everything. And then the wife stepped in and went, no, we're not moving to New York. Are you crazy? Are you out of your mind? I'm like, please. I'm like begging my wife, and she's like, no. But if you ever have a chance to go and look at the pictures, it's absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely.
Yeah, it really is.
Oh, the other really quick thing, the only thing the wife said that she didn't like is she would wake up at like 2 a.m. and look out her bedroom window, and there would always be paranormal investigators taking pictures, walking around the lawn, getting in their mailbox. And she was like, that pissed me off. She goes, and she sometimes would go out there and be like, there's go away. I mean, so they did tell me, are you ready for that? Is that something to be ready for? And I'm like, oh man, I said, I might take a shot at it.
Yeah, exactly.
My bow and arrow, swing an arrow past them. But she said, yeah, just get used to that. You get interviews. She goes, I get interviews every Halloween.
Oh,
Everybody wants to come in and they want to give us money to look around the house. And she goes, that got old too. She's just like, kind of old, But it was funny you did that episode, and not only you, but a lot of people have.
Yeah.
I would be doing that episode later and be talking about a little more experience about that. So.
Oh, I love it. I'm excited for that.
Okay, so let's get right into it, shall we?
Okay.
So, Stevie, I found a place so haunted that investigators have become so frightened that they have fled the building and leaving all their equipment behind.
Wow.
You have seen this place on television shows like Destination Fear and First Hand Account. So today, and this is going to be fun because a lot of people haven't heard about this, is we're going to discuss the old Randolph County Infirmary in Winchester, Indiana.
Oh my gosh, I've never heard of this.
Yes, this is a great one. Like I said, people have literally left, like in the middle of an investigation. And I'll get you some spookiness that you might too if you investigate it. So before we get into the fun in the history, I got to go through my sources really quickly. Bump in the Night was one of my sources. I used hauntedrandolphcounty.com. That's the official site. Hauntedrandolph.com. That's another official site. They have a ton of official sites for this place. And then hauntedus.com, as well as Reddit. I found some interesting things in there. So one of the things is, again, the history of this, like every asylum, which I did with Chelsea. I did, well, we did I did the Edinburgh Manor and also Randolph, and then also, the Wood County Asylum in Wisconsin. And all of them have the same story almost, but this one is even more scary. So you lucked out.
All right.
So if you're into Indiana, if you follow State Highway 27 south of Winchester, Indiana, you'll spot an odd looking building standing out amongst the farms and fields. Too big to be a farmhouse and too well decorated to be a barn. This is the Randolph County Asylum. And I'll put pictures up on all my social media sites. And when you see it, you'll be like, huh, that's a little weird. Kind of in the middle of nowhere again. And it isn't your average rural Indiana property. So let's get into a little more of the history. Okay. Outside Winchester, the Randolph Asylum still stands, like I said, and it has a history that dates back to the early 1800s. And I always say on this podcast that 1800s was one of the worst times ever. Like they did terrible things to people and nobody cared. And it was just like, man, no way I'm living in the 1800s. Screw you.
Yeah.
Get it. So it first belonged to a local farmer, and he was a nice guy. He housed a bunch of people who were, down on their luck and able to live alone. And he housed them in exchange for a little bit of money. And they worked on the farm. So it was really nice guy, right? He was like, move on in. You're down on your luck. Let me help you. Work on the farm, get some money, and then when you're ready, you can move out. So really nice.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets worse. So that's the nice part. Now we'll get into the scary part and the terrible part. In 1851, they built an infirmary there. So they basically kicked the farmer out and said, we need to have an infirmary or an asylum. And so they started building on that. And it was built in 1899 when they all got everything first done. And like I said, they also had a poor farm on this. So I've talked about this before. A poor farm is where you get a bunch of, poor people, or I should say slave labor, and they work on this farm for nearly nothing or nothing. And they grow crops, and sometimes they're able to eat them or sell them, but most of the time, maybe not. So this was a fixture. Like in every county or state, they had an asylum. They had a poor farm and they had this infirmary or asylum. And like I said, they often sheltered people who couldn't provide for themselves. So residents included mentally and physically disabled, those with mental illnesses, unwed mothers. Yes, if you were unwed mother in the 1800s, you're in your 30s and you still weren't married, there's something wrong with you, Steve. Come on, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, Spencer.
The aged and orphan children, along with whole families, too poor to live independently. And now let me back up here. So these people are all put together. So you might have your poor family next to an insane person, like criminally insane, right?
Yeah.
Just like someone who
dangerous.
Might kill you in your sleep.
Yeah.
Right, dangerous. And these orphan children next to, again, a criminally insane person or a pedophile, or just think of the most terrible person and that poor kid growing up right near that person. And
vulnerable.
Yeah, right? It's just unbelievable. And then one of the things too, like I said, it was originally a homeless shelter and a mental institution, a foster home, a rehab place. So they kind of built it over time to like put like 5 or 6 things into one. And I don't know about you, but if you've ever been to like a hospital that has like, here's the mental wing, here's the rehab wing, it's weird, right? It's like,
it's too much.
People, it's too much. You got all these people jammed together. And, and there's no security. There was no security at this time. So again, they could do whatever they want. So what happened now is the Great Depression happened in the 1930s. And the federal government stepped in and helped people the way it could. But guess what? They didn't help. Who really needed help? Asylums. So all these poor people, mentally ill people, orphan, you name it, were put out into the world. Just figure it out. Just go.
Wow.
Okay. However, there is a little piece of good news. Randolph decided that it's not going to close, that it's going to help. Now, I kind of was researching on this. I'm like, why would all the other asylums or a lot of them close and these ones stay open? I don't know why that was. I couldn't find anything on it, but I can tell you it's probably nothing good. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like they probably found a way to steal money. So, for instance, the Edinburgh house or asylum or whatever you want to call it, they stole money from the state for years. It was a
Oh,
total
wow.
fraud. So they were supposed to get money and they just stole it.
Yeah.
Or they would, the biggest thing to do in this time was to reach out to the family and say, hey, John's in here. Stevie, could you please give us money to keep John here? And you're like, oh, yeah, sure. I need to help him. Here you go. That money never saw me. Never saw the light
Yeah.
of day, right? They took it. So that's what I think what they did. Now, it did struggle for decades to keep open. And during that time, obviously not a lot of upkeep. They couldn't hire help, maintenance, so on and so forth. So, oh my God, I can't believe this. So years later, like about 1980s, 90s, it still was around. And when they went in there to try to, when people came in there to be like, okay, we got to pour this thing, take this thing down, right? They found 5 people still living there. Okay. 5
Wow.
people
Oh
were
my
still living
goodness.
in that when they closed it down for decades. These people were still living there in there, inside the
Jeez.
crumbling walls. So imagine living in a building that is falling apart, and this is the only place you can live. Now, I
Yeah.
didn't say who the 5 people were, but let me ask you this, Stevie. Would you have done that if you were that bad? Or what do you think you would have done? Just
I
curious.
suppose it would depend, like, if you knew that was all you knew, maybe, and you didn't know
Mhm.
what to do outside of those walls, that would make you want to stay. So I'd probably stay, if, out of fear of what was beyond them, or lack of money would make me stay.
Yeah,
Comfort probably, like familiarity would probably make me stay. But if I felt trapped there and then suddenly I was able to leave, I would definitely leave.
yeah. You know what someone brought up, one of my other guests brought up is, and I'll put this out there to you on my social site, is people just left stuff. So you will see, like, for instance, like at the Wood County Asylum, Edinburgh Asylum, what I did, there were beds with sheets on them and like a robe and like slippers. Like someone just went, okay, like if I woke you up in the morning and say, okay, Stevie, let's go. And you were
Yeah.
like, what? And you're like,
Yeah.
no, let's go. You got to go now. You
No
got to
time
go
to
now.
pack.
No time to pack. Got to go now. Isn't that weird? Have you ever
Yeah.
seen places like that where it's just everyone left something behind? I don't know. I
I've
don't know if you
heard of
have.
things like that.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
never seen it personally, but I've heard of stuff, and it's very creepy and eerie to not
Right?
know. Like, could it have been, was it bad? Was it scary? Were they terrified? Like, why would you just leave
Yeah.
everything?
Yeah. And there's like 2 rooms where the hairbrushes are still there, their makeup is still there, their clothes are still in the closet. Right?
Yeah, that's
That is
interesting.
so weird. So now it starts to get really bad. And you wondered, how could they stay like this and how could they stay open? Well, reportedly, there were over 200 deaths on this property. Over 200. Nobody has an exact count. And
Wow.
many died of natural causes, but there were numerous suicides over the years, as well as infectious diseases. Nobody treated these people, okay?
Yeah.
If you got tuberculosis, if you got the flu, if you got anything, you're on your own, okay?
Yeah.
And to make things worse, there's a lot of unmarked graves where they just dug a grave and threw someone in there. Could you
Yeah.
imagine, trying to find let's say your great 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 grandma, and you're doing one of those 23andMe or you're doing Ancestry, and you're like, well, that's weird. She was at this asylum, and then that was it.
Yeah.
Huh?
No record past that. That would lead you to believe she was in an unmarked grave for sure.
Yeah. And the thing too is, and this doesn't happen today because of HIPAA, but at Edinburgh again, they found these medical records just medical records of people, what they had, when they died, but know where they died. Someone picked them up, someone grabbed them. They were just out in the open, just out
That's
in the
crazy.
open. And there's just pages of these people, and you're like, where'd they go? Where are they now?
Yeah.
No idea. Absolutely no idea.
The disregard for human life is really heartbreaking.
Isn't it? And then you wonder why there's so many hauntings.
Yeah, exactly. Like, these people had a rough life. I mean, surely that stuff got left behind. It was traumatic.
Yeah, it's like one day you're just, oh, by the way, I always like to say this because I think this is always makes me laugh, but it's not really funny. You got to remember too, if your kids were acting up, you could just put them in an asylum.
Yeah, that's insane. Or your wife. Yeah.
I could say, Stevie, get an asylum.
Yeah, I'm sick of you. This is over.
I said that to Chelsea too. Asylum.
Yeah, I would. Back in the day, I would have been sent for sure.
Awesome. But isn't that terrible? Where I could just show up and be like, "Yeah, she screwed up my dinner. She burnt my steak." So,
didn't even give her a chance to redeem herself.
Oh boy, so I just love it. So we're gonna get into the paranormal events here, which I think are really interesting. So with such a history of death, it's no wonder, like I said, that many consider Randolph County to be one of the region's most haunted places. So ghost stories permeate every ward of the Randolph County Asylum. And one of the prevalent stories is the sound of slamming doors echoing through the empty halls. So if you go, there's a ton of stuff on YouTube as well as Destination Fear. You can look at where they're just standing there talking and then slam. And remember, it's like 2 or 3 in the morning. It's perfectly quiet. And then slam.
I would jump out of my skin.
Yeah, I would pee myself, but I'll do things differently. But other people have reported finding certain doors mysteriously closed and hearing these different sounds behind the doors. So, for example, one guy, paranormal investigator, said he was walking down the hall, the door slowly closed, and he was like, "Oh, I don't know for whatever reason, but I'm going to check out this door." So he went to the door. And he could hear like voices behind it, like whispering. And then he kind of backed away. Especially prevalent around the building is there's a holding cell, of course, built to house tenants who became, Stevie, I think you're in this, became disagreeable. Or violent. I'm not saying you're violent.
I am disagreeable sometimes.
You're in big trouble. You're in the hold cell. And around this cell, again, it's the same thing. If you go, that I've heard a million times, maybe you've heard this too, is you go into this cell, you feel dread, you feel nauseous, you feel like someone pressing against you, like someone, I don't know if you've ever someone that grabbed you and like pushing you really hard, or you've been in a crowd and someone's squeezing you and you're trying to get out of that's how I feel.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good. And it's really hard to get out of the cell, especially with women. And I know I always pick on women, but I'm not trying to.
It's not your fault.
It's not I didn't do it. I'm not doing it. They like to grab your hair. They like to grab other parts of your body. Also scratch you. So, just be careful.
Yeah.
All my spooky friends who are women out there, just be careful when you're out there. You tend to get most of it for whatever reason. So the other thing is ghostly sounds include disembodied footsteps pacing around. And that's also all around the place, but it's on the first and second floor halls. You hear that. Also, disembodied voices are said to be a common occurrence throughout the asylum. And many claim, oh, this is so sad. I always say it's sad every time I heard voices of small children talking in the building Also, people have heard these spectral children laughing and playing. And that to me is always, when I've done all these reports and all this research, you hear that a lot. And it's always sad, right? Because these kids are
Yeah.
just like having fun. They're just being little kids and they don't realize they're dead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's no one
Mhm.
telling them to go on, which is
Mhm.
it's always terrible. So with these reports are often quite widespread. Like I said, childlike laughter is often reported in the first floor of the woman's wing. So there you go. It's always the woman's wing. But not every ghostly voice at Randolph County Asylum is all fun and games.
Oh.
Visitors have heard pained screams echoing throughout the corridors in certain areas of the building. By the way, there are some really good EVPs out there. If you go on YouTube, there's a ton of them where you'll hear people just screaming like they're being tortured. It's
Oh,
just terrible.
wow.
Just terrible. And remember, there is a way you can do. They really flaunt it, and I'll get to this later. You can do ghost investigations. They're totally open for it. So, despite the numerous reports of these ghostly sounds and voices around Randolph County Asylum, perhaps the building's most striking tales come from the ghosts you might see while you're there. So these are the ghosts that you're has a good chance of seeing, as there are numerous reports of apparition and shadow figures in the building. So I always had shadow figures.
Yeah.
Are you scared of shadow figures too, Stevie?
Yeah, I only have one experience with one. I don't specifically remember it. I
Please
remember
don't.
it as a dream. But when I was a little kid, my grandma said I would sit up in the middle of the night when I was about 3 or 4 and say that my Uncle Ricky there was a man in the doorway. And then I would tell her it's Uncle Ricky when she'd ask who it was.
Yeah,
And I
sure.
very distinctly remember a dream where I saw a shadow figure of a man standing in the doorway from the hallway. And my
Yeah.
Uncle Ricky had passed away at that house. So it was, and I had never met him. So to tell my grandma it was my Uncle Ricky, she said that really freaked her out. But that's the only time I've seen a shadow person myself. I just find them very scary. So maybe I don't see them out of fear.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. So they also have shadow, like I said, all that good stuff. But they also have white misty figures, like dark apparition. Visitors to Randolph County Asylum have seen them all, and many have recorded them on night vision and thermal imaging cameras. So again, Destination Fear, that's a good one. You can look at that season 2 if you're looking to see Randolph County Asylum.
Okay.
Randolph County Asylum. While most of these figures are seen as human silhouettes, other shadow figures around the building take different, ever-changing shapes. So they change. These moving, shape-shifting shadows have been reported many times around the asylum, and have investigators even claimed to capture these moving shadows on a video. And
Wow.
I've looked at some, you'll see the shadow changing. So it'll be like going from a little kid to growing to a man. And then it will
wow.
it'll hunch over and like, damn, I'm out.
Yeah, that's too much. No thanks.
That's too much. So, along with the numerous claims of paranormal activity, Randolph County Asylum has a few well-known entities who visitors and investigators often try to reach out to. One of, and I got to put pictures of this. This will creep you the F out. This is going to be crazy when you see the pictures. It's hard to do now because it's just audio, but one of the most well-known is Doris. Hi, Doris. She's a former tenant and kitchen worker in the early to mid 1900s. Doris's ode a bedroom is a particular hotbed of activity, and this is the fun part. It is full of porcelain dolls.
Oh my
Doris
goodness.
loved her life. And these
Oh
dolls
wow.
are still in the room. The dolls
wow.
have been, and when you see them, you will be like, ah!
Yeah. Oh.
Oh boy. So these dolls in her room have said to move due to unseen forces. Okay. Also, objects in the kitchen where Doris used to work are known to move without any cause. And that to me, when I see the pictures, then you'll be like, oh my God. Just creepy.
Yeah, I can only imagine them.
Doll faded. Do you have any dolls that ever creeped you out?
I own one porcelain doll. It was my grandmother's, and I inherited it, and it stays in a room by itself. It does creep me out simply because dolls creep me out, but I try to remember that she loved it. So she had
Yes,
my
love.
grandmother. Yes, exactly. My grandmother had hundreds of porcelain dolls. She was a big collector.
Yeah. Oh boy. So anyway, I'll put pictures out there when you see them. You'll say. So
Yeah.
again, like I said, there was over 200 deaths here. So a lot of people say that it depends where you're going and when you're investigating. You might get the brunt of it, or you just might see like one or two. You might see a doll move, which is spooky enough, or you might see an entity or shadow. But one of the things, this is a ghost hunter. He stated during his investigation. And his name was Kimmel, not Jimmy Kimmel, but just. So anyway, he said, once I was alone in the hospital part of the wing or area, and I heard 3 distinct footsteps coming up the stair. Then the door handle in the room I was in started to turn and shake violently.
Oh.
I'm a grown man, and that was enough to make me want to run out of the building. So he was sitting there. I don't know if I can find the video, but basically the guy was in this room investigating, looking around, and he heard footsteps, boom, boom, boom. And then the door handle just went, chug, 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 like someone trying to get in there. And he was all
That's
alone.
too much. Yeah, I would cry.
That's the guy who ran out, and many have run out of there. So another entity is a former judge, which is kind of weird that a former judge would be in here, but okay, who is said to be especially cruel and harsh, of course he is, with his punishment. According to legend, I'm sorry I'm laughing, this ain't funny, but I'm just like, I laugh when I get a little scared.
Yeah.
They held hearings in the building's, guess where, Stevi? Attic.
In the attic?
Now
oh my God.
Yes. Why? You tell me.
I have odd.
No. Yeah. So again, I will put pictures out there. He, for whatever reason, was an addict, and he was a really, really, really stern judge. Like if you stole, I don't know, let's say you stole a loaf of bread, he might throw you in jail or throw you in here for the rest of your life just for stealing bread or a watch or whatever. Right? Anyway. So his gruff, angry voice has reportedly been captured on recordings, and you can hear this again by past investigators and many visitors who now try to communicate with him in the attic. I don't know if I'd do that. But despite the judge's seemingly off-putting personality, he may not be alone in the attic. A child's tricycle stored up there is known to roll around the floor on its own. Also, you will hear a child's laughter, and also some toys are up there for some strange reason. That the child's spirits are known to linger through the building. So in this attic is a tricycle. Again, I'll put it out there, and it would just move on its own and just start to pedal.
Wow.
I don't know about you. Again, if I'm alone, I'm out there.
Yeah. And then I would be also very concerned for the child being up there with that guy.
Hey, that's awesome, right? That's the mom.
Yeah.
So like, that is just some of them. And one of the things before we wind up here is I just want to kind of say, again, this place is open to investigations. I'll get that in a little bit. But before I get into that, Stevie, I asked all my guests, haunted, not haunted. What do you think?
I think it's haunted. If it's scaring people out like that, and then it's got some really good staple activity like the footsteps and the door jiggling and the kids' laughter. That's some stuff you know, when you hear that stuff, it's usually pretty a sure thing.
Yeah. Not to mention porcelain dolls moving.
Yeah, that I blocked that one out on purpose, I think.
And I've only scratched the surface. You can go and look for numerous investigations there and scare yourself out, and you will stay awake all night with the lights on. You're welcome. So unlike ever before, Randolph County Asylum is the hub of local interest and activity. Tourists and ghost hunters from across the U.S. come to Winchester, Indiana, almost every weekend. So this place is packed to take part in private investigations, public ghost hunts, large-scale paranormal events, and film shoots. Yes, there's been numerous horror movies that have filmed at this place.
Oh,
And I
wow.
don't have the list in front of me, unfortunately, because it would take too long. But go look it up on IMDb, search movies that have filmed there. A lot of movies have filmed.
Wow. I'm definitely going to
Yeah,
look that up. I'm curious now.
it's crazy because it's in the middle of nowhere. Again, when you'll see the pictures, it's the middle of nowhere. And you'll see that it's like, oh, okay, I can see why people, are scared there. The other funny thing, and I had to look at this twice to make sure I wasn't drinking too much or something. I wasn't on. You can get married there. Yes, you can have a wedding there if you
What?
want.
Oh my goodness.
And people
That's kind of
have
crazy.
had weddings there because part of the section they cleaned up to make it a little nicer. And there are pictures of brides, being married there.
That's amazing. That's incredible. I mean, I might try something like that. I'm a little weird like that, so.
If it's go and look at it. So if you're like I said, if you've heard of I don't know if Destination Fear is still on. I think it is. I haven't watched it in
I've
a
heard
while.
of it, but I haven't watched it in a while. Yeah.
It's also on, if you want to check out this, on Americans Paranormal Lockdown, both, I believe, on the Travel Channel.
Okay.
Yes, you can book an investigation in the asylum today. So, if you ever wanted me and you and Chelsea to go down there, I'm totally up for it. But you have
That'd
to
be
book
so
it
much
well.
fun.
You have to book it well in advance
Okay.
because it's like growing and it's very popular. And again, it seems all the tales of the dark shadows and things that go bump in the night have made Randolph County Asylum's future brighter than ever. So again, I'm going to put it where I'm going to try to put some links in here where if you want to book some time for there, you can, or I'll just put the number out there. You can call the number or text them. They say it's pretty reasonable. I can't remember. I think it was like, if you want to go there just like yourself, I think it was like $25 to do the ghost
Oh, wow.
tour. It's fairly reasonable. It gets a little higher up each time you bring someone along and you get the equipment, but they have no problem. They're like, come on down. We're totally cool with it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, awesome. So hopefully you like that.
I did. That was a great story.
Stuff. So Steve, we have a little time before we wrap up here. Could you tell my spooky friends what to look forward to in your podcast? Anything coming up? Any scary stories? Anything good?
Yes, I actually have so much coming up. I did a whole series of 7 episodes in a row, one episode per day for 7 days for Halloween. And I did really great interviews. I had so much fun with that. But during all of that, I was also doing heavy research because I've had, through the guests and through recent interactions with people I've met through my guests, I've learned a lot of things, specifically about Annabelle. So I'm doing an Annabelle part 2. I'm very excited for that. And I will be doing part 2 for Amityville and Enfield. I've got some updates and some stuff to share that I've
Enfield.
found.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And then I have my episode on the Arnie Cheyenne Johnson case coming out, the Devil on Trial, the Conjuring 3 or 4, maybe 3. Yeah. And I'm going to cover that. And there was a new documentary recently. That's why I waited for this episode. The Devil on Trial on Netflix. Highly recommend that documentary. It was very good. And I will be covering it in that episode. So all that's coming. And I have a lot more guests coming I'm very excited about.
Love it. Love it. That sounds awesome. I'll definitely be listening. Like I said, my spooky friends, listen to Stevi. She got some great guests. If you ever want yours truly as a guest,
absolutely.
I will definitely go on there for you. I have some good serial killer stories of Ed Gein and Jeffrey Dahmer. I also have I was in Savannah for a little while. And if you don't know about Savannah, it's one of the most haunted locations in the United States. Also, I have a ton of Wisconsin and scary and spooky stuff. So glad to share any stories for you. Love to be on your show. So if you get a chance, you want me on, I would
Yeah,
definitely do that.
definitely. We're going to schedule that for sure.
Awesome. Well, before we go, we always say two things. One, say hi to your ghost. Hello, ghost.
Hi, ghosts.
And stay spooky. Thanks,
Yeah.
Stevi. You're awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.